What you're needing is not to be in a different place, but to be a different person. Dear adventurers, it's when the daydreaming leaves you, nothing to look forward to, when your life loses the aspect of play or for fun, when even your relaxation activities like video games or consuming content becomes a grind. Nothing scratches the itch. You start to feel overcome with, maybe it's a call to the wild, a call to be alone in nature. Maybe you should buy a ranch in Texas. Maybe you need to start keeping bees. Maybe you need to stare at an icy lake for a solid winter, or hike the Appalachian Trail. Or maybe you need LARP. It starts to feel like only something crazy will solve whatever strange first world problem you find yourself in. You need to sell everything and run. You feel like a cornered animal, fight or flight, instead of just modern living. You don't even know what has cornered you. Paranoia, anxiety sets in. You'd rather be alone than with people, to deal with people, put in effort for friends who don't even really like you, do they? It feels like you've lost an anchor somewhere and now you're drifting off. Maybe you need to fly to Alaska. Or maybe you need to LARP. Now, such a silly problem, I believe, necessitates a silly solution, because really, it is a silly predicament to be in. You are a monkey, and modern living is not so conducive to satisfying the needs of a monkey, and so you think maybe nature and solitude might settle you back down, might be the medicine. Sometimes I think it would be easier if I was actually fighting for my life instead of just fighting to wake up in the morning. Dealing with the human needs of my assigned meat sack and working for numbers in bank accounts, make them go up or go down. So I'm suggesting, well, why don't we try out fighting for our lives instead? Maybe you need to howl at the moon with some friends. Maybe you need to leave technology behind and carouse in the tavern, sleep in a tent, run through the woods, whack at and be whacked by the tangible enemies before you. Now, I'm not suggesting you actually join a war. I'm generally a pacifist, but there is an answer here to satisfy that monkey inside of you who doesn't crave just nature per se, but is wondering, where is my tribe? I don't want to be alone. I just don't understand why I'm alone. When you live in a city, there are people all around, but largely none of them are your tribe. It turns on the paranoia. It's just a normal safety precaution built in. Comes standard every monkey. When a monkey is separated from its tribe, when it's meeting strangers, there's this little switch of anxiety that kicks in. Now, what do you think that monkey does when he lives in a goddamn city? Strangers brushing by, of course she's going to want to isolate, to stay inside. She's surrounded by potential enemies. It's safer to assume malice than kindness, and it's not their fault. The city will slowly weigh in unless he's found a tight yet large community, and that's hard to come by these days. So staying inside more often. So of course, now you're going to crave nature, yes. And when you do go meet with your friends, maybe only a couple of good friends, you're gonna have a hard time turning off that anxiety switch because you've got it turned on all the time anyway. And the monkey inside doesn't necessarily recognize these so-called friends as tribe because you only see them, once, maybe twice a week? Really? It's not enough. So you're starting to crave that hut in the woods, aren't you? But not all by yourself. You need family in arms, to feel your new friends battling at your back, to find someone you would follow into the charging chaos. You don't need to read or watch Lord of the Rings for the 100th time, you need to live it. The mental reset after a week-long event, a LARP, like Beakeline, is earth-shattering. Returning to the IRL is not easy. You miss everyone, your new tribe. You get the Beako blues, but suddenly your real life, is a bit more straightforward, isn't it? That creative force returns and you can use that to finally change course. You have something to look forward to again. Next year, next campaign. You have people to plan with online, maybe even some new local tribe mates. You have kit to make. A war to plan. Suicide rates decline during world wars. Did you know that? That's right. Rates of depression and suicide decline dramatically during world conflict. And no, not because suicides are misattributed to the war or something. I'll leave a link below. But suicides spiking in the 1920s and 30s with no end or understanding of mental health at the time in sight, only to dramatically fall over the world, all over the world, at the outbreak of World War II. The war began, the war effort began, and almost overnight, those rates plummeted. No more anxiety, no more depression, barely any suicide. It transformed nations of individuals into tribes. Suddenly we're all in this together, aren't we? Everyone was suddenly necessary. Everyone had a role. But you don't need a war to break out with all the disease, death, and orphans to find the same thing. Your little monkey brain can't tell in the moment that those are foam swords and that Skaven is actually Frank from accounting. All you know is your general just fell. The left flank is collapsing. It is up to you right now and the 4 warriors left standing with you. Hold the line. Choose the hill you're gonna die on. To me, you shout. Your squad straightens, forms up, picks themselves off the ground. For the south, you scream. You die on that hill. And what a hill to die on. The mud, sweat, sun or rain, it all comes off in the river alongside something else. You don't feel cornered anymore, do you? Now that you're bumping tankards in the tavern, watching the gnomes dance, your problems are tangible, solvable. It rains, you dig trenches around the tents. You're hungry, go eat. You play Viking games, you attend rituals, swap battle stories at breakfast before gearing up and doing it all again. You don't even need to join the battle to earn the effects. I've never actually participated in a LARP battle because of my knee, but it's healing. One day I am coming for you all. You just need to join the war effort. Carry water, cheer, deliver bread. Help a paladin put on her bracers. Can I tell you another strange statistic? It has to do with making friends, which concerns me greatly. An acquaintance, for example, you can make pretty easily. But it takes about 50 hours of close, intentional time with that person to have them go from an acquaintance to a casual friend. It takes another 50 hours. No, I'm sorry. Yeah, it takes another 90 hours to go from a casual friend to just friends. And then over 200 hours total minimum to develop a close friend, a best friend. So to make a best friend over the course of a year, you need to dedicate about 4 hours of intentional, vulnerable time with that person a week. Not just working out together or like playing a board game together, but doing everything together, like really talking and connecting to another person. 4 hours a week. If you want a tight-knit group of close friends, you'll really need to put in the hours to develop those intimate relationships. It's hard to meet people. It's harder to align schedules as adults. This is the plight of the city, which is why the majority of my greatest and closest friendships were developed at nerdy conventions. Sharing a hotel room. Imagine 3 whole days, eating, playing, sleeping, helping each other with makeup and costumes, running around a convention together. Suddenly, it's not 4 hours a week of like strange coffee dates, but 72 hours of friendshipping done in a single go. Not coffee meetings, not just working through some small talk and catching up, but doing tribe things together. I understand their bathroom habits now. I see their eating preferences, their rituals before bedtime. If you floss or brush your teeth first, or if you don't floss at all, it's monkey to understand a person based on their actions, to foresee their needs, and to start predicting their behavior. They become known to you. That is what we need to feel close to someone. How do we do that in a modern time when everyone works 40 hours a week more? How do you align schedules with somebody? How do you find somebody willing to put in the time? It's impossible. So imagine what something like an overnight LARP can do for you. You have some friends right now, catalyze those into best friends with an overnight weekend adventure. You don't have anyone? Show up at your local LARP, put in the time adventuring with newfound family, and those warriors at your side might become your closest friends, in and out of character. Beekaline is a full week of decorum, 168 hours, plus travel time if you travel together. Is it any wonder we meet our lifelong friends at places like this? Is it any wonder that no matter where these people live in the world, they are my tribe? We went through floods and bugs and 4 a.m. bathroom adventures together, not just a dozen unsatisfying catch-ups over drinks or coffee, but a real-life adventure through the highs and lows. Listen, we all get low. Life is weird. What monkeys have done and do on this pale blue dot is weird. We're not even supposed to be able to read. We've just hacked ourselves into it, and it's reorganized our brains into something beyond what we've evolved for. It's incredible. But sometimes we get removed from the monkey. We live in cities. It's natural to seek nature. It's natural to want to go. We need the hut in the woods. That's what we think. But don't forget to seek your tribe as well. It's not just us nerds who LARP. If you're feeling the call of the wild, if you are old, if you are young, if you're Frank from accounting, like, we have a place for you, consider joining us instead. We really could have used you on that hill. Sometimes we need to face hardships to reset our hedonistic treadmills, and fantasy ones are the best way to do that. Like, don't go actually starve yourself somewhere. Camp for 8 days, battle in the sun and the rain, reset your baseline so strawberries taste sweet. Again, cold, crisp water from the water pump is ambrosia. Changing your socks is sublime. Just laying on the ground, propped up on a log after dying repetitively in a battle is the most comfortable you've ever felt. All we have in this life, it isn't time, actually. It's our attention and the choice of where we focus that attention. We have a need for community driven by a unifying purpose, and that can be found in so many ways. The traditional escape to nature retreat might be hiking the Appalachian Trail or driving around the United States in an RV. But it's the people you meet along the way, coincidentally, that satisfy whatever itch we may have. Sometimes it's an itch you can't scratch. That requires a friend to scratch it for you, you know? Fellow hikers camping by the creek, fellow road trippers, nomads sharing food and drink in the RV park around a fire, in life in the city. We're often never alone, but still lonely. The urge is to leave for the opposite. We try to fix it by seeking something completely different. Perhaps we think, away from the crowds, we might feel alone, but not lonely. But that is grasping at an answer without understanding the question. As Seneca quoted Socrates in his 104th letter, which I will read more of at the end of this video if that is of interest to you, it addresses some of my more major escapist concerns with LARP, but the gist is, Socrates is reported to have replied when a certain person complained of having received no benefit from his travels, "It serves you right. You traveled in your own company." In my own summary, if you can't find yourself where you are, why do you imagine you'll find yourself elsewhere? In my opinion, stop trying to find yourself. Understand your question, your sickness, in order to make your answer your medicine. We know ourselves only because we are social creatures. We have friends who know us. To know yourself, you must be known, be vulnerable. If you do feel you have lost yourself, then there's no hope in finding yourself if you remain alone. So don't. And don't even try to be yourself alone in a hut in the woods. Go be someone else entirely. Go be Blick Blick, barbarian of the Southlands, fighting for something more than herself. But I've not addressed something I should when it comes to LARP. Part of the into the wild, hut in the woods ideal is an anti-consumerist rebellion. There's a privilege, let's be clear, in being able to LARP. All of this costs money, time off of work, maybe even travel expenses if you don't stay local. My feeble argument against this is a plea for priority. A lack of time off and vacation is correlated with higher mortality rates, which have long-term effects. If you take less vacation time in your middle age, you will have higher mortality rates in your older age and more complications. Not everyone has the money to budget, but prioritizing your health and well-being should be high on that list. You need an escape. Maybe that's watching YouTube videos. Less expensive, but maybe that's living at a LARP a couple weekends each year. And further, I believe the hut in the woods is a cry for an anti-consumerist way of life. To get away from the rat race, spend less or even spend nothing. Self-sufficiency. Old world skills like wood carving, living off the land, making and repairing your own clothes. How dare I suggest LARP, which is becoming more and more of an industry, let's be clear, with LARPers as a target consumer market. How can that have the same anti-consumer appeal as Thoreau's transcendental dream? Fair enough. I've only been a part of this community for a short while, and already I see a shift in how we treat our beginners, less teaching them how to make things themselves and more pointing them towards where to spend their money. Stores and brands to buy their character instead of make them. We encourage consuming more than learning a skill. This isn't blanket. There are many people who don't. But even the rules of our games are changing. Gone are the days when a homemade boffer might pass an inspection and be cleared for battle. You'll need a brand name foam sword if you want to fight. So now you are directed to a packing list with links to buy your tunics and your belts and your swords instead of tutorials and historical findings. But making your kit takes so long. Who has the time? Fair. They'll still have to buy tools and supplies. Fair. Are they really saving money? Is saving money the point? I do think you will still save money long term making your own gear as much as possible, but you'll earn something greater alongside your crafting. Do we really want to teach new LARPers to buy fish, or are we teaching them to fish? I have already seen the slow squeeze of capitalistic death descend on the cosplay community. Far easier now to buy a fast fashion cosplay prop than learn to make anything yourself. To be seen as a beginner in a costume that is obviously handmade is just not aesthetic. Right? Aesthetic is its own capitalistic trend. We want perfection, to be seen as the character we cosplay as. So we outsource to get exactly the right buttons and exactly the right officially licensed prop. And oftentimes that outsourcing isn't ethical in the first place, just more mass-produced plastic made for pennies across the world. I digress. At a LARP, you are not cosplaying a specific character. No one can tell you your scar is on the wrong side or your skirt is the wrong color. Your character at a LARP is your own. It's original. And I would argue they deserve a chance at being unique, at being able to grow along with your own skills. Not another Arm Street or Holy Clothing lookalike, but someone. You, perhaps with the help of your friends, crafted yourself. But I'm so bad at crafting. I suck at sewing. I don't know how. That is perfect. That means you have room to grow. That means your character is going to grow with you as you develop as a crafter. I had messy, unhemmed Viking. One day I will be barbarian queen. Simply a half wood elf transforms over years to a mighty ranger captain, leading a platoon of archers on raids. You have time. Choose patience over being spendy and like the latest hot, trendy piece of plastic. Craft. Find things thrifted, vintage, unique, make them your own. I could talk for several videos on reframing LARP to resist consumerism, but it is time to move on. Let me know if you would like to listen to me talk a little bit more about it. I love LARP because it is an apex hobby, a hobby of hobbies, and I do love me a rabbit hole. So next time you feel ennui, when you feel the call of the wild, when your inner monkey cries daily, and there's an urge to get away, consider putting on your tunic, grab your tankard and your bow, and Helska will meet you on the next hill. All of us will meet you on the next hill. And if you need help getting there, So many of us are ready to help you during your adventure. Our adventure. Thank you for indulging me by watching this philosophy meets LARP rant video. If you would like to support my work, consider delving into my website below. If you are feeling down, however, perhaps at the end of your line, then this is your sign. It gets better, we need you, and it may be time you seek out professional help. There are links and hotlines in the description below. Save yourself, we need you. LARP and friends can help, yes, but if things get serious, serious assistance becomes necessary. To end, I am going to read some snippets from Seneca's 104 letter to his nephew Lucilius, as it helps me put into perspective what LARP and travel can and cannot do, and how to make the most of it. Funny how 2,000-year-old writings can still find relevance in modern problems, yes? Farewell. I expect you're keen to hear what effect it had on my health, this decision of mine to leave. Well, no sooner had I left behind the oppressive atmosphere of the city and that reek of smoking cookers which pour out, along with a cloud of ashes, all the poisonous fumes they've accumulated in their interiors whenever they've started up, then I noticed the change in my condition at once. You can imagine how much stronger I felt. After reaching my vineyards, I fairly waded into my food. Talk about animals just turned out onto spring grass. So by now I am quite my old self again. That feeling of listlessness, being bodily ill at ease and mentally inefficient, it didn't last. I'm beginning to get down to some wholehearted work. This is not something, however, to which mere surroundings are conducive, unless the mind is at its own disposal, able at will to provide its own seclusion, even in crowded moments. On the contrary, the man who spends his time choosing one resort after another in a hunt for peace and quiet will in every place he visits find something to prevent him from relaxing. The story is told that someone complained to Socrates that traveling abroad had never done him any good, and he received the reply, "What else can you expect, seeing that you always take yourself along with you when you go abroad? What a blessing it would be for some people if they could only lose themselves. As things are, these persons are a worry." What the fuck? As things are, these persons are a worry and a burden. As things are, these persons are a worry and a burden, a source of demoralization and anxiety to their own selves. What good does it do you to go overseas, to move from city to city? If you really want to escape the things that harass you, what you're needing is not to be in a different place, but to be a different person. Suppose you've arrived in Athens, or suppose it's Rhodes. Choose any country you like. What difference does the character of the place make? You'll only be importing your own with you. You'll still look on wealth as a thing to be valued. Your poverty will be causing you torment. While, this being the most pathetic about it all, your poverty will be imaginary. However much you possess, there's someone else who has more, and you'll be fancying yourself to be short of things you need to the exact extent to which you lag behind him. Another thing that you'll regard as something to be valued is success in public life, in which case you're going to feel resentment when so-and-so is elected consul, or when so-and-so is re-elected, for that matter, and be jealous whenever you see a person's name appearing too often in the honors lists. Your ambition will be running at so feverish a pitch that if anyone's ahead of you in the race, you'll see yourself as coming last. Death you'll think of as the worst of all bad things, though in fact there's nothing bad about it at all except the thing which comes before it, the fear of it. You'll be scared stiff by illusory as well as genuine dangers, haunted by imaginary alarms. What good will it do you, too, have found a route past all those Argive forts and one escape right through the enemy lines? Peace itself will supply you with new fears. If your mind has once experienced the shocks of fright, you'll no longer have any confidence even in things that are perfectly safe. Once it has acquired the habit of unthinking panic, it is incapable even of attending to its own self-preservation, for it runs away from dangers instead of taking steps to avert them, and we're far more exposed to them once our backs are turned. To lose someone you love is something you'll regard as the hardest of all blows to bear, while all the time this will be as silly as crying because the leaves fall from their beautiful trees that add to the charm of your home. Preserve a sense of proportion in your attitude to everything that pleases you, and make the most of them while they are at their best. At one moment, chance will carry off one of them, and at another moment, another. But the falling of the leaves is not difficult to bear, since they grow again, and it is no more hard to bear the loss of those whom you love and regard as brightening your existence, for even if they do not grow again, they are replaced. But their successors will never be quite the same. No. And neither will you. Every day, each hour sees a change in you. Although the ravages of time are easier to see in others, in your own case they are far less obvious. Because to you they do not show. While other people are snatched away from us, we are being filched away surreptitiously from ourselves. Are you never going to give any of these considerations any thought, and never going to apply any healing treatment to your wounds, instead of sowing the seeds of worry for yourself by hoping for this or that, or despairing of obtaining this or that other thing? If you're sensible, you'll run the two together, and never hope without an element of despair, and never despair without an element of hope. What good has travel of itself ever been able to do anyone? It has never acted as a check on the pleasure or restraining influence on desires. It has never controlled the temper of an angry man or quelled the reckless impulses of a lover. Never, in fact, has it rid the personality of a fault. It has not granted us the gift of judgment. It has not put an end to mistaken attitudes. All it has ever done is distract us for a little while through the novelty of our surroundings, like children fascinated by something they haven't come across before. The instability, moreover, of a mind which is seriously unwell is aggravated by it, the motion itself increasing the fitfulness and restlessness. This explains why people, after setting out for a place with the greatest of enthusiasm, are often more enthusiastic about getting away from it. Like migrant birds, they fly on, away even quicker than they came. Travel will give you a knowledge of other countries. It will show you mountains whose outlines are quite new to you, stretches of unfamiliar plains, valleys watered by perennial streams. It will allow you to observe the unique features of this or that river, the way in which, for example, the Nile rises in summer flood, or the Tigris vanishes from sight, and at the completion of its journey through hidden subterranean regions is restored to view with its volume undiminished, or the way the meander, theme of every poet's early training exercises, winds about, loop after loop, and again is carried close to its own bed, and then once more diverted into a different course before it can flow into its own stream. But travel won't make a better or saner man of you. For this, we must spend time in study and in the writings of wise men to learn the truths that have emerged from their researches and carry on the search ourselves for the answers that have not yet been discovered. This is the way to liberate the spirit that still needs to be rescued from its miserable state of slavery. So long, in fact, as you remain in ignorance of what to aim at and what to avoid, what is essential and what is superfluous, what is upright or honorable conduct and what is not, it will not be traveling, but drifting. All this hurrying from place to place won't bring you any relief, for you're traveling in the company of your own emotions, followed by your troubles all the way. If only they were really following you, they'd be further away from you. As it is, they're not at your back, but on it. That's why they weigh you down with just the same uncomfortable chafing wherever you are. It's medicine, not a particular part of the world that a person needs if he's ill. Suppose someone has broken his leg or dislocated a joint. He doesn't get into a carriage or board a ship. He calls in a doctor to have the fracture set or the dislocation reduced. Well then, when a person's spirit is wrenched or broken at so many points, do you imagine that it can be put right by a change of scenery? That sort of trouble isn't so serious that it can't be cured by an outing? Traveling doesn't make a man a doctor or a public speaker. There isn't a single act which is acquired merely by being in one place rather than another. Can wisdom, then, the greatest art of all, be picked up in the course of taking a trip? Take my word for it. The trip doesn't exist that can set you beyond the reach of cravings, fits of tempers or fears. If it did, the human race would be off there in a body. So long as you carry the sources of your troubles about with you, those troubles will continue to harass and plague you wherever you wander, on land or on sea. Does it surprise you that running away doesn't do you any good? The things you're running away from are with you all the time. What you must do then is mend your ways and get rid of the burden you're carrying. Keep your cravings within safe limits. Scour every trace of evil from your personality. And if you want to enjoy your travel, you must make your traveling companion a healthy one. Farewell.